It's truly about addressing the trauma that we go through, while at the same time rebuilding our physical bodies, increasing our strength, our energy, while learning how to eat differently, rebuilding relationships, not just with friends and family, but with our partners. What can we do to increase your energy? A lot of times it's eating differently. It is exercise, which a lot of people don't think helps, but it does. It's how our body functions. It's extremely smart and adaptable. Okay, if that's the purpose, then like, okay, well then I have to learn how to eat, because I thought I ate healthy before cancer, and this experience totally completely changes that perspective.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to the VoCP Talks, a platform to empower the cancer community. Our guest speaker today is Casey. Casey is a three-time survivor of acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Her expertise in various fields has led her to become a personal trainer, a cancer coach, a nutritionist, and a yoga instructor. She has also authored the book Finding Your Way Back to Heart Center, Cancer Treatment Ended, Now What? And she's a cancer exercise specialist and also the founder of A Happier, Healthier You. So thank you so much for joining us today, Casey. Let's get started with the questions.
Absolutely.
So could you tell us about how you first got diagnosed with cancer and the treatments you underwent?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia on February 14th, 2014. And I was immediately hospitalized for 28 days. And I was supposed to undergo a 18-month protocol to cure my cancer, and it was a 97% cure rate. So I did daunorubicin, doxorubicin. I did intrathecal chemotherapy, which is where they take spinal fluid out and then put chemotherapy into your spinal column that goes straight to your brain. And I've done pretty much, I've done a lot of chemotherapy. And then 28 days into, or about 4 months into treatment, I had a stroke because of the chemotherapy, a pegosparaginase, and was temporarily paralyzed on my left side. So I had to relearn how to walk and talk and eat and do all of the things while still undergoing chemotherapy because I wasn't in remission yet. So I'm going to give you the abbreviated version because otherwise we'll be here for 45 minutes. But so fast forward to 18 months later, I finished the protocol, and 7 weeks later, I relapsed. I was out of options. They said my body's no longer responding to chemotherapy. They said we can go on a clinical trial, or we can try this immunotherapy called blinatumomab. I was like, you're asking me to decide? Okay. So we went with the less invasive route first, obviously, not to mitigate the chances to still participate in the clinical trial. So we did that. It failed. It sent me right into a cytokine release storm where your body basically starts to attack itself and shut down. So in and out of a coma for like 3 days, which I literally thought was like 20 minutes. I had no sense of time whatsoever. I come out of that and they were like, basically, you're going to go on this clinical trial. So I did everything leading up to the clinical trial, which is almost a month and a half of prep work where they literally test you for everything imaginable and to gather your information to start the clinical trial. A week before I was supposed to start, it got shut down. So without a clinical trial, we didn't really have options. And I said, well, what do you mean there's no options? They're like, well, there's a clinical trial at another hospital, but there's a wait list and we can't get you on it. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I didn't know what to do with that. So they were like, we're basically going to keep you alive with blood and platelets until something else comes available or a spot opens up. And I was like, okay, that's not like great news for me. They're like, but in the meantime, we know your body doesn't respond to chemotherapy. We're going to try this anyways, just to see if it works. Worst case, we keep the cancer at bay. And I was like, okay. So we did the FLAG protocol, which is 4 different aggressive types of chemotherapy all at once, and it did nothing. And so I was like, I need to get out of this hospital. I've been here for 68 days. I'm going stir crazy. I need to not be here. I go, I will come back and do as many blood and platelet transfusions as you need me to do. I will come back every single day, but I have to get out of here. So they let me go home, and they basically told me to settle my affairs because they didn't know. So the goal at this point was to get me into remission, to get me eventually into a stem cell transplant. So the problem was they had to get me into remission. So as my journey continued, they said, well, there's this experimental immunotherapy out there. Do you want to try it? They're like, it's not for your cancer. Here's the data. It's 2 pages of research, 114 participants. 11 of the participants had what I had, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and the outcomes weren't great. And I was like, it doesn't sound like I have a choice. It sounds like either that or just blood and platelets. So I'm going to go. We'll try it. Worst case scenario, at least you can collect the data and it might help someone else. That's all I thought. And so we wrote a letter of compassion to the FDA and to Pfizer, the drug manufacturer, because it wasn't approved yet, and waited. So I settled my affairs. I had some really hard conversations with family and friends and tried to act as normal as possible, holding on to hope that something would come through. And finally, after 2 months, they said it's approved. So after 4 rounds of isatunemab was the immunotherapy that I did, they were like, okay, you're in remission. So we immediately went to stem cell transplant, which my brother is my donor, and back into the hospital again. And I went through another round of chemotherapy, another round of radiation, and a stem cell transplant. And basically after my GVHD settled down, they sent me back home. Well, 6 months later, I relapsed again. And we're like, okay, well, what do we do now? They're like, well, let's try the immunotherapy again because we want to keep the stem cell transplant to do it again, just in case. And I was like, okay. So 4 more rounds of that immunotherapy, and I've been in remission ever since. And so that's like the short story of it. And it's still really long.
Sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
So when you got diagnosed, how did this affect or change your career?
I basically had to stop working at that point. Shortly, 8 months later, I did try to go back to work. I went back for about 8 months, and then when I relapsed the second time, I stopped working again. I worked a very corporate 9 to 5, and it was like either you were working or you weren't, and there wasn't like a middle ground for that at that point. And so they asked, when I finished treatment, I was supposed to go back to corporate America. And at that time, it was prior to the pandemic, I said, I'll come back to work. I'd been there for 10 years. I just don't want to come into the office every day. It was a 2-hour daily commute, and I said I didn't want to do it anymore. My time is so valuable, and I didn't want to spend it in a car anymore. And they wouldn't agree to it. So I said, this was my line in the sand, and I can't do it. So as a byproduct of that, it really like shoved me into what I do now, which is helping other survivors through rebuilding their life and picking up the pieces and trying to move forward, which is actually something I deeply, deeply value and love doing as a result. So unfortunately, my time in corporate America stopped, but I truly found my passion and my purpose, I think, from all of it.
So you are a personal trainer, cancer coach, nutritionist, etc. So how did all these expertises help you through your cancer journey?
Well, quite frankly, I selfishly was trying to heal myself. You come out of treatment and you are a very different person. You're lost, you're overwhelmed, you're frustrated, you're all these things. Your life is completely different. And I was like, how do you make sense of all of this? While at the same time still rebuild your physical strength, increase your energy, learn how to navigate this new body that's so completely different. And I selfishly was trying to heal myself, and ended up, as a byproduct of healing myself, finding a very clear approach to this, which was whole body. It was mind, body, soul, and healing it all at once. It's not just one thing. Yes, knowing how to exercise and things like that helps me, because I'm postmenopausal actually, at 35, and all I knew about menopause was weight gain and hot flashes. And so, I was like, I can't gain weight if I know that weight management is the number one tool to prevent a reoccurrence. So I'm like, okay, if that's the purpose, then like, okay, well then I have to learn how to eat, because I thought I ate healthy before cancer, and this experience totally completely changes that perspective. And what you thought was healthy oftentimes isn't the reality of what actually is.
So you are the founder of A Happier, Healthier You. So what exactly is that? And if someone joins the program, what can they expect?
So it is a 13-week survivorship program, and it is a systematic approach to healing from the inside out. It's truly about addressing the trauma that we go through, while at the same time rebuilding our physical bodies, increasing our strength, our energy, while learning how to eat differently, and everything that I found useful, rebuilding relationships, not just with friends and family, but with our partners, and navigating what does it look like to go back to work or not? What does it look like to, rebuild your own confidence, because your body physically is so different? What does it look like to get rid of the fear and the anxiety, which is like the number one thing that we address inside of this program, is learning how to regulate your nervous system, reducing the fear and anxiety, finding purpose and meaning through all of this. Everything that you need to do to be able to move forward confidently again.
You just mentioned the term survivorship plan. So what all does that include?
So it includes exercise, it includes yoga, strength training, cardiovascular. It includes writing prompts. So there's journaling to do throughout the entire program, so you know exactly, like, okay, I'm not just asking you to sit down and think about things. I'm asking you really moving questions that truly will help you move forward. It's about letting go of what you thought your life was going to be, and starting over again, and doing it in a way where you're not filled with anxiety and fear the entire time that something is going to happen again, because we don't know at the end of the day. But I do know that we have control over a lot of things, especially because of epigenetics, that if we do, we have the power to help our cause as much as possible. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to help myself along with the others to improve our lives. There's nothing bad when you start to eat better and you start to exercise. Nothing bad comes from that.
Yeah.
So it's a virtual program, so everything's online. If you want more information, I do have a website. It's thehappierhustle.com is my website, and you can find out more information there, or feel free to shoot me a message. Happy to share more information with you directly, so then that way you don't have to search around.
Okay, so someone who has completed their cancer treatments often feel like their energy levels are low, that they feel really exhausted. So are there some ways they can combat this?
Yeah, I mean, not only do you have to look at what can we do to increase your energy, a lot of times it's eating differently. It is exercise, which a lot of people don't think helps, but it does, because they're like, well, I'm already tired. How am I supposed to exercise? Well, it's how our body functions. It's extremely smart and adaptable, and we need the dopamine, the adrenaline that you get from exercise to help increase energy over the long haul. As a byproduct of that, you end up sleeping better, which we need sleep to have energy. And then you have to look at the flip side of, what are you wasting your energy on? You know, a lot of times what people don't realize is that being in fight or flight mode, fear and anxiety, having a high level of stress, uh, zaps your energy faster than anything else. And even though it's not physical, the mental energy that you're putting out there just to deal with that on a daily, regular basis is a lot of wasted energy that you could be using to focus on moving forward and getting yourself into a better place instead of scared to move forward.
So you're saying that stress is the number one cause for these low levels of energy in these
No, I mean,
people who have.
there are a lot of reasons, like medically speaking, yes, chemotherapy, radiation, all do take a toll on the physical body, but there's a better way to repair the body than doing nothing and waiting for time to kick in. Yes, at some point, you do need to recover, but you can also do that while increasing your energy and increasing your strength as well. And your lifestyle is a direct reflection of that. And so if you're stressed out all the time and you're constantly worried and you're constantly in fear, that is going to drain a lot of your energy faster than, let's say, if you weren't scared, worried, and stressed out all the time.
Getting diagnosed with cancer, how does that change or affect your relationships and your support systems? And are there any ways you can navigate through these changes?
Yeah, so I lost a lot of friends along the way. You know, your friend group gets a lot smaller. You definitely know who's got your back and who doesn't. Um, you know, the friends that are there will always be there for you no matter what. My journey was really long, so of course, the longer it goes, the more fatigued your friends and family get just from talking about it. So there were points in my journey where I was like, if I don't talk about it, that's fine. Complain about your kids, tell me about normal life stuff. I need that in my life. I need to not just focus on getting through treatment every single day. I need something normal to talk about as well. I want to hear about you complaining about your kids. It affects partnerships. Like the dynamic completely changes. It goes from we're partners in this in life and doing it day to day to patient caregiver. And then you have to go back from patient caregiver to partners again. I mean, for me, speaking personally, it caused a lot of problems. There was a lot of repair that needed to be done. There was a lot of relearning how to operate as partners again instead of caregiver patient, because there were literally so many times where he was taking care of me, literally. And so it does change the dynamic, and there's a lot of repair. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to that. I dedicate one module inside of the program just on relationships, friends, family, partners, because of how much they support us, but yet, we don't know how, we're not given the tools to repair that relationship to go back to like a normal partnership.
So you talked about going back to this partnership. So transitioning is often really difficult. And do you think there are some ways you could make this process a bit easier?
Getting through.
Transitioning back to normal life. Yeah.
I do. I think that time does not make it go away. I think you need to address it head on. I think that, in my opinion, you need a systematic approach to address the physical, the mental, and the emotional components of surviving sooner rather than later. We are, unfortunately, as survivors, at a higher rate of anxiety and depression. And the pre-COVID statistic is 45% compared to the normal population. So I can't imagine what it is now. And that's just what's reported, because oftentimes we don't even share that we're feeling this way. So I'm assuming we're in the 60s and 70s, if not higher. And, I think a lot of people assume that time does make it better, and it doesn't. It just, you start to normalize those feelings that you feel, and that just becomes your new normal instead of actually talking about it, addressing it in a systematic step-by-step way. And there's a way to do it. I broke it down into 13 weeks, and that's still, that collapses time, because what I did for myself took years, and I put it into, okay, what actually helped, what didn't, in a very systematic way, which is why the clients that I work with have the results that they do.
Do you think there are any ways in which we could reduce the probability of a recurrence?
How do I deal with it, or?
Is there any ways we could reduce the probability of a recurrence?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
so I'm sorry. Yeah, I do. I think that diet, lifestyle, all make a huge difference. So exercising, diet, healing the trauma. The more information I'm reading about trauma, which is how it affects our bodies and our health overall, the more I'm leaning into, like, there's a lot of healing that needs to happen internally in our bodies. Lowering as much stress as we can, getting the proper amount of sleep, doing all of these basic things that we just shoved to the side because we're back to living life, or we're too busy living life. They actually, our health matters more than ever. So I think our lifestyles do make a huge impact over long-term survival.
So finally, do you have any message to the patients and survivors of our community here?
I do. So, I always say this to everyone: you are stronger than you realize, and you will get through this and anything else that life throws at you. And as long as you can focus on the things that you can do and not the things you can't control, you will get through this. And it is one step, one day at a time, and progress is progress. And always finding something to hold on to and never lose hope. Like when they told me to go home and settle affairs, I did it because I knew I needed to do it, but I never lost the hope that, or the possibility that I wasn't not going to be here. Like, I just didn't believe what they were telling me. I believed that I was going to be here, and I don't know why, but you who's listening needs to believe that as well. Like, hope is our greatest, I think, our greatest inspiration, motivation to be here and never lose it.
Certainly, hope is really important.
It is.
Tougher times.
Yeah. Sometimes that's all we can hold on to, is the hope that it's going to get better, despite the pain, despite the frustration, despite the overwhelm and the sadness. And there's so much of it through this journey. But I never lost hope, even in the darkest moments when I was like, I literally can't do anything by myself, let alone sit up. I held on to the hope that it was going to get better. And I just believe that so much.
Okay, I think it's time we end the session.
Absolutely. I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to come on and share with you. I so greatly appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Casey, for joining us on today's session on cancer awareness and sharing your expertise and experience with all of us. Would you like to let everyone know how to find you on social media or join your program?
Sure. So obviously I have a website. It's thehappierhustle.com. You can find me on Instagram at thehappierhustle, and on Facebook as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.